GameSpot presents the HotSpot. It is Wednesday, February 8th. I am Tom Magrino. We have an excellent show for you today, mostly because... Wait, yeah, CAROLYN PETIT is here.
Hi.
How are you doing, Carol?
I'm good. And
it's been a long time.
It has. And on that note, let me say, last time I was here,
yeah.
I'm really happy to see you, because last time I was here, some schlub named Sinclair or something was sitting in that chair. Didn't know a damn thing about hosting a podcast.
Like he's never been in this room before.
Right.
When I have invited him into this room. So I don't know what his deal is.
I feel like I'm in good hands today. I'm happy to be here.
You ask me, that guy should be fired. I don't know. McShea, how are you?
I'm great. I've been playing the Vita.
The Vita? Which is not a word.
No, it's not.
It's not a word.
I've been playing the Vita the last few days.
Think of Vita Mix.
Yeah, every time you say Vita, I think of Vita Mita Vegemin.
Whoa.
From I Love Lucy.
Okay.
Vegemite? What?
No, she endorses a nutritious compound called Vita Mita Vegemin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Marco, have you ever heard of that?
No, I guess I'm too young for that.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't say it.
No, actually, I think I'm younger than you by like maybe half a year.
Oh, how old am I?
Aren't you 1981?
No.
Okay, I'm 82.
No,
I'm December 82.
You're
so
older than Magrino.
Then I'm older than you
you're
by
younger
6
than
months.
me, and
Yes.
Kevin is somewhere in between all of us.
Kevin is somewhere between...
I'm somewhere
between
between
Carolyn and
Methuselah
Marco.
and the Olsen sisters.
But
is where I land.
I will say that, Kevin, you have the games of the week, would you say? Kingdoms of
Weird.
Amalur and The Darkness 2. Two of the biggest games come out this week. These games we're going to talk about in the theme of today's show will be combat mechanics, because I think both of these have very interesting combat mechanics that we can kind of go into. So if you want to just say, I don't know, describe Kingdoms of Amalur's combat.
Okay. Kingdoms of Amalur's combat is
Not with your voice. Let's see it.
Dance.
Interpretive. There you go.
Boom. Thwim.
Thwapim?
That was a bow and arrow, not a gun.
It was also briefly Android Atlas. 'Cause I hit the wrong button. But no, so it's
Okay.
I mean,
there you go. That's what it's like. It's third-person action game combat with magic
in an RPG.
Yeah, it's sort of like take God of War and combine it with Fable, and maybe this is what you would have.
Mm-hmm.
So would you call this game more of an... Because I hear it called an RPG a lot, but it often sounds to me more like an action RPG. And I don't even know
What's the difference?
where the distinction is anymore. But it sounds like, I don't know, your review, you refer to it as an RPG, and it seems to be a game that we might have previously referred to as an action RPG.
Well, what is Mass Effect then? Is that is that? I don't know.
To you, that's a shooter.
I'm sorry.
We're slightly derailing.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can answer the action RPG question if you want.
But I do think that it's an RPG that has action combat. But usually when we think of action RPGs, we think of a much more focused experience, as opposed to the kind of experience that you get when you're in a larger world where you're doing lots of quests in open areas and talking endlessly with people that have a lot of dialogue to deliver. So it has the elements of a general RPG or an open-ended RPG in terms of the world, in terms of the way it tries to tell its story, and in terms of the way it fills that story with that world with different characters that go about their business in certain ways. But it has the elements of an action RPG in the sense that its best elements are the combat and the looting and the leveling.
Right. Okay, so before we get into that any deeper, let's talk about The Darkness 2 real quick.
Okay.
So The Darkness 2 is a super hyper-violent action game. I don't know if you can describe it as anything else. Maybe you can. I can't, certainly.
Yes, it's a super linear, super hyper-violent...
frenetic combat.
Yeah.
Almost manic combat.
With really gross things happening.
And quad wielding.
Quad wielding.
Quad wielding is the interesting part.
It is sort of. Yeah, I mean, well, it is the most interesting part of the game is that you go through, and in addition to having your two guns that you fire with the triggers like you would in a given shooter, or the way you would with a mouse and keyboard if you're playing the PC version, on top of it you have two demon arms, one for thwapping and one for grabbing, and those are ultra fun. Like a thing you do is you grab a dude,
right,
and then you twirl him up in your demon arm, and then your arms each have mouths on the end of them, and it go right up through their body and goes. They're very happy because they just got blood
devoured.
Yeah, they devoured organs,
right,
and human meat.
So when I played this game, I've only played this game for maybe an hour.
Oh, good. You're about a quarter of the way there.
Oh, am I? It's short.
It's about maybe a fifth of the way there.
But well, the thing that I noticed is there's just so much, like, I don't know, like you control the buttons. There's so many buttons.
It's not like you're 100 years old.
With the buttons, and I don't know how to press them. But you've got 4 different attacks that you can choose from at any one time, and it seems to encourage dual wielding. So it's like I'm fine. I was playing this on the PlayStation, so it's like I'm the PlayStation. So I'm just like jamming on these buttons, and it's just like why do I need
You're doing
4
it
different
wrong.
attacks simultaneously? Is that overwrought? Is that
Well, no,
no?
not to me. I don't think
Can a
it's
game
overwrought,
support?
but I don't think that dual wielding is the way to go anyway. Like if you just take the demon arms out of the equation, I had a lot more fun being able to just aim down the sights and shoot.
Right.
But you can dual wield, but that's I don't know. Like the game's not hard, and you can. Probably one of its problems is that you can then kind of rely on doing the same thing all the time to kind of win. Like ultimately you get different enemies that have like big shields and you get the dudes that shine light on you,
Right.
which is bad because then your arms like kind of slurp up back inside you and you can't really see stuff because you're blinded. But like ultimately you can sort of, shoot dudes, charge forward, wrap them up, eat their hearts, and just continually, like it's great that it doesn't have, well, it has regenerating health in the sense that it's got quadrants of health,
Yeah.
and that they like the lowest, like on medium difficulty or on the second difficulty, like the whatever quadrant you're in will regenerate, but not further than that. Sort of like Riddick,
Yeah.
if you're on resistance or harder difficulties, it'll only regenerate the lowest of the, or at least in the third difficulty, it only regenerates the lowest of those quadrants, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, generally all you have to do is like shoot up stuff, make sure that the dude is, because the dude has to be sort of staggered for you to pick him up with your left tentacle. Or if you just shoot him down, you go up and you eat the heart of the corpse on the ground. Like if you just continue like kind of that sort of pacing, like get them staggered, eat them, regenerate all your health, just keep going.
Yeah.
Then you just kind of keep doing that all the
So
way
it just
through.
becomes a rhythm, a cycle of
Yeah, and because it's super linear and because the AI is kind of dumb, it doesn't really mix up beyond that. But I hate to like spend too much time on that stuff because the game's super fun. And like, even though occasionally like it kind of gets old seeing this, like, okay, I've seen this animation a million times, so it's
Right.
kind of losing its impact. Like the fact that you do unlock new animations, it does sort of retain its edge. And then the story has these things where these awful things happen to you. And so the shock value doesn't wear as thin as you would have expected it to. It does wear a little thin.
Do you think the game would have been better if they would have just gone without guns whatsoever and given you only tentacles?
No,
No? In what way?
because the tentacles only take you so far. Is my
What if they altered the game design? What if they just focused the game design on the tentacles and not worried about, having to fire your gun? I mean, it seems like in the game,
what
is
would they
the
do?
gun
Like
only
spit
used-
teeth or something?
well, no.
You don't need
Projectiles.
bullets.
So
in
you're
every
suggesting
game.
to turn it into a melee, like a melee combat game in a way, and just take out the ranged combat entirely.
Well, the range would come from the range of your arm.
Right.
Right,
I
but
mean,
basically.
that's not a big range.
well, no, not entirely, because in that game also you can grab, like, say, a door off a car and fling it, so that in turn becomes
Right.
a...
That becomes a projectile. That's
And-
true.
And you have your Darkling. Is that the creature?
You do
that-
have the
and
Darkling.
Can you control him and kind of guide him?
You can pick him up and throw him once you unlock that particular thing. Otherwise, he just does his own thing.
Okay.
Sometimes he'll pick up a car door and like he'll do a shield. Sometimes he'll jump on them. If you had more control over the Darkling, let's say you took like Overlord's mechanics or something
Well, that
and kind of
sounds-
mix them. Maybe not Overlord or Peak. I don't know. Whatever.
Might be a little more complicated.
You know,
need
like-
the right stick for aiming still, but you have
Right.
like black holes. Like it
You
seems
have black
like
holes. It tries really hard to like mix things up. I mean, one of my biggest problems with the games is that that's all it's doing to try to mix things up.
Yeah.
Like if you break it down in other ways, like it's like even in my mind, even by modern shooter standards, like this game is pretty linear. You really are doing this
Border crawl.
all the time. And because the AI is not smart, you can really get away with just pulling off these one or two moves like over and over and over again. And that's the thing. Like, I love games that give you variety, but I like games more when they present enough situations that you have to dig into your well of
that variety.
Well, it seems like, from what I know about this game, and it seems like they didn't build a game around the tentacles. It's just tentacles as another weapon.
Yeah.
And that seems like the weird thing, because Prey 2 looks like it's because it's built around like this bounty hunter thing, and the levels are open-ended in that way, and it seems like it's at its core they know what it is, and Darkness 2 kind of missed what it is at its core, and it just kind of just slapped this way to kill enemies into an already existing template.
Yeah. Well, they went
So,
into
I mean,
it like a
you
shooter.
take away the guns, and it's a lot more interesting, isn't it?
I think so. It could have been interesting if they did something
Potentially.
with that, but they would have to really build on that. I think
Yeah.
for that to be interesting.
You'd have to build from the ground up as opposed to just putting it into the template. I guess that's the question Magrino was asking.
Sure.
Right.
When you got
Yeah.
when you're talking about the combat mechanics, this falls back on old tropes too easily and too quickly.
Yeah, but I think I think what they have there is really fun. I think if there were other fundamentals that would have been done maybe differently, like with the AI and with the level design and stuff, I think this could really have been something. But as it is, it feels like your ordinary everyday shooter, only really bloody and with your big arms.
Yeah.
As opposed to something like the first game. I liked the first game a lot, and I'll be the first to say it was flawed and a little clunky and awkward in a lot of ways. But it also was very interesting because it wasn't like anything else, really. And it had a feel of an adventure game in which you wielded guns rather than the feel of a shooter in the way we think of shooters now,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
And so, by contrast, talk a bit about Kingdoms of Amalur. It seems like this game has successfully implemented a new combat scheme into RPGs. Like it figured out that most RPGs have really boring combat. Like Skyrim, I feel like has very boring.
Most Western RPGs.
Most Western-
I would say.
I would say
I
even
tend to like
JRPGs.
JRPGs combat more, but I would say most Western RPGs have pretty awful combat.
Yeah.
I know some people disagree at this table, but
but like as far
Amalur's
as
is good. Amalur. Amalur's is good.
Amalur's is good because, well, I mean,
I'm proud of you for the pronunciation because you said like Amular like most of the week.
That
So,
that
good
title
way.
is
Good
as
job.
bad as the title gets. It's like just out of like the random generic name generator thing.
Well, that's the whole game. Like everything that's not the combat and the looting and the leveling, it's like we're gonna pull this out of the random like here's the hat of random generic tropes in fantasy games.
Yeah.
And here you go.
that's weird how that happened. I mean, I can't even. It just strikes me as completely crazy that they would mess up the RPG element and then somehow nail the. Well, I don't even know if they nailed the combat. It's definitely better. This game is way
yeah.
too easy.
Yeah, that is
That
a
is
problem.
kind of the thing about this game.
It is
Because
easy.
when you talk about games that nail the combat, like the first two games that come to mind are Kamiya's two classics, Beautiful Joe and Bayonetta.
So how did they nail the combat?
Well, because you have a huge arsenal of moves. So the controls are perfect, and you have a lot of different moves to do in different enemy
By
types. And you
perfect
have
controls.
to.
What do you mean?
They're. I mean, it's responsive.
Okay.
It's as soon as you push a button, it works.
That thing
exactly
happens.
as you would expect it to work.
Yeah.
But you have to use your repertoire. And I know people are going to say the Red Hot Kick from Beautiful Joe, which
Red Hot
was
Kick.
was
Red
a
Hot
cheap
Kick.
crutch at times. But generally speaking, when you fought an enemy, you had to use your entire arsenal, and it was really difficult. So you had to be smart and thoughtful in your fighting. And Amalur, as much as I love the combat, is more. I will not pronounce it correctly. Is not like that. Can I call it Reckoning? I could call it Reckoning.
Just
It's
say
not
Reckoning.
like that. So I guess
Call it
that's
Kingdoms.
like the actual action feels great, but the
KOAR.
I'm not going to do that.
Okay, but-
Reckoning.
But do we want? I mean, in an RPG, do we want like challenging? I mean, because the combat in Beautiful Joe and Bayonetta, part of what makes it so exciting is that it's really hard. And I guess we do want sometimes we want really challenging combat in an RPG because that's a huge part of what makes Demon Souls and Dark Souls so incredibly engrossing. But I also think, sometimes from an RPG we want something that we have a sword that has really high stats, and that should make slicing down enemies easy. Or we
totally
want
agree.
combat that's fueled by die rolls.
I guess it's like because the way Bethesda handles it, Fallout, Elder Scrolls, the way the BioWare handles it, except for Origins, their combat is super easy, and I turn off my mind and I just wait for the good stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot. I mean, that happens in Final Fantasy also, where I just tap X the whole time to win.
Yeah.
But I guess it's worse when it's an action game and I have to like manipulate the camera and aiming and stuff, even though it's super easy and there's no thought to AI or tactics or anything.
And that's the thing to me in Amalur. Like here's a game that's built around the combat, and so when you don't have something like Mass Effect 2, for example, where the combat just gets in the way of the stuff that's more interesting. In Kingdoms of Amalur, it is the combat that's most interesting, and so that's when you start noticing the ease of it. I would definitely say that most people would want to crank this up to hard difficulty right off the bat.
Totally.
Yeah.
And you'll get a lot more out of it. But I do think that you do get into situations that are interesting and challenging in this game, and usually they come from, number one, I mean, this is pointed out because I did a live stream of the game last night, and this was pointed out. I didn't point it out in the review because I didn't think it was particularly relevant, but it is, for some people it's relevant, is that once you're in the middle of a combat animation, it's not going to end until you're done.
Okay.
And if you're using a great sword, or if you're specifically, making parrying kind of the basis of how you're leveling up, then that might give you trouble because you might be in the middle of a long animation and suddenly you get 5 different enemies that are in different attack patterns. The game is really good about knocking you back and taking away like half a second of your time before you're able to like swing back. And you can get put into some damage loops. Usually you're okay because again, you don't take a whole lot of damage, per hit. But once you get on hard, I think you're going to have to actually be strategic. And there are times when you're facing like one of those big Jotuns and stuff like that. Like
I mean, I feel like the fundamental reason why the game isn't particularly hard is because they give you like a really nice control scheme and a lot of versatility with your attacks, but they make the things that you're fighting just super dumb. Like, it's just a matter of taking away all of their hit points. Doesn't seem like the enemies have much strategy coming at you. So you don't have to, have flexibility with how you, or, exercise any kind of strategy with how you attack. I just noticed I don't know what's going on.
That's how you know it's an RPG.
Wait, what?
That's how you know it's an RPG.
Because there's no strategy?
Well, no, because when is the last time you played an RPG in which you felt that the AI was somehow...
I mean, it's hard. It's weird to even say this, but what about Final Fantasy 13? You don't think of the AI, but the combat is really difficult in that game. You have to be really smart in how you shift your paradigm.
Sometimes, yeah. And yeah, there's
not 13.2, which is apparently much easier.
But that's not coming from AI. That's coming from. I mean, there are a lot fewer variables in that. Like, it focuses on, it knows what your healer is, and it does this and it does that. But that's built up more because well, you know what I mean.
It's still
like,
AI, though.
It is AI in a sense.
We don't think of it as AI, but it's still.
But it is AI in a sense. But then you've got a situation, where it's real time. When you have this great combat system, and then you start noticing that the stuff around the great combat system aren't taken from great combat games; they're taken from RPGs.
Well,
and so that's when you see the.
Yes.
It's interesting when you talk about like where this game is heavily influenced by World of Warcraft. I don't know if anybody can refute that. The visual style, the quest mechanics.
In some ways.
So one thing about World of Warcraft is it has a very clever, maybe not like the yard trash level, but certainly the boss battles. They have very clever situational encounters where you really have to use a lot of strategy. So it's a shame that they didn't, take that cue as well, where, instead of just throwing enemies at you, they kind of throw them at you in clever ways.
There are times. I mean, but yeah, a lot of the time it's like you walk in and the enemies are where they happen to be.
Right.
And so when they attack you, they're just doing it in whatever pattern that one enemy is set up to do, as opposed to in some kind of clever ways where they've scripted this kind of encounter. But, the combat's very different from World of Warcraft, so I don't want to...
Right.
And a lot of people are making this World of Warcraft, comparison, and I sort of get that, but I don't get that nearly as much as some people seem to be getting from it.
Well, the visual style, I feel like you're walking through Azeroth.
Isn't it like Cameo? I mean, it's like Cameo, or it's like what's Lionhead's world's called?
Fable.
Albion.
Albion. To me, it's more like Albion.
It's a little more colorful than World of Warcraft.
World of Warcraft is a lot more skewed. It's a lot more Warhammerish.
Yeah.
For very obvious reasons. And I wouldn't say there's really a whole lot that's Warhammerish. It has some of that skewed thing. You see crooked lampposts and, rooftops that do their weird things and like painted on textures in that World of Warcraft way.
Yeah. I mean, when I say that, I'm not saying in some disparaging way.
I understand.
There's very clear visual cues.
And I agree with that.
Yeah.
I do agree with that.
And also probably quest design where, talk to this guy with question or exclamation point, and then although most games have, or a lot of RPGs at least, have adopted the but
that was even before World of Warcraft, if you can imagine. They did not invent the question mark quest design.
Who invented it?
I don't know.
Tell me right now.
I don't play World of Warcraft, and I know
Pull that out of your ass.
I know that. That's.
I certainly did it in MMOs before I played World of Warcraft.
Yeah. I don't think anything was invented in World of Warcraft, was there?
Well, that's the whole thing with World of Warcraft.
Yeah, it's just a refinement of previous
refines things
ideas.
that came
Right.
before.
They invented the way to jam 12 million people onto one server into a game.
Yes, there you go.
But no, back to combat mechanics. The I don't know. But yeah, so what you brought up earlier, Tom, about what games do this really well. Beautiful Joe.
Well, Bayonetta and Beautiful Joe are the kings of the action.
I'd put Ninja Gaiden up there as well. To me, like that's another
Ninja Gaiden Black?
Black. I mean, Black was. I mean, I think Ninja Gaiden 1/Black.
Okay.
I didn't play Sigma, but I mean that's an example of a game where you have this vast arsenal of moves that are available to you, and the enemies, are all really challenging. They have different tactics that they use. They can do a tremendous amount of damage to you if you let them, and you really have to employ a wide variety of abilities from your arsenal to effectively take them down. And what makes part of what makes the combat in that game so rewarding is just kind of mastering those various abilities that you have, some of which are not always easy to pull off, and kind of learning how to handle each type of enemy and effectively slicing and dicing them.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of interesting how much game design plays into these types of it's not. It seems like it's not enough to just give a player a lot of either a big variety of enemies, or A or B, like a big variety of weapons. It has to be both for it to really. And is that's
Well, it has to go even further than that, because it's like, I mean, because Mass Effect 2, as I bring up a lot, like it feels really good, like the controls are really good, but the level design and the AI don't make it so the combat's not interesting in that game. 'Cause it's just so linear and it's so limiting in what you can do. So you need to get every variable right to make combat actually good. It's like Vanquish. They totally understood level design within their mechanics.
And we're back to Vanquish.
I know, but it's like
always
that's
comes
a
back to
game.
Vanquish.
Take long.
That's a game that understands how to do combat, because it's like, what is your
What did
move set?
Vanquish not understand how to do?
That game is one of the best. It might be the best shooter ever. But it understood it's the best shooter campaign I've ever played. How about that? But it understood what its moves were, and it built levels and enemies around that. Like, not every game does that, and Amalur does not do that. It understood what its moves were, but doesn't understand how to make that interesting.
That's I mean, to me, that's one of the game's biggest problems. I mean, it has this lack of identity, which has been pointed out time and time and time again. So I'm not going to be the first person to say this, but that's the thing. It does feel like, here's the team that sat in this room and did this thing in this game, and these people did this thing, and these people did this thing. But I'm more and more conscious of ever of like games that have this really cohesive tone and this cohesive thing where it's like everything seems to be built around doing and being one thing. One of the reasons I loved Bastion last year is because it felt like everything was built around that game, knew exactly what it was, and everything seemed kind of built around this single tone.
Well, are you talking when you're talking about Amalur's different rooms? Are you talking about combat still, or the whole game?
I'm talking about pretty much the whole game.
Okay,
but I mean,
what about like combat specifically? Like, what do you think they could have done to make it more interesting? Because it's not just like ramp up the difficulty and make the hit points higher.
well, I think they could have put you in situations where where the boss fights could have been more interesting. There aren't a lot of boss fights either, and I think if they had more boss fights, that probably would have been more fun. I think if you were put in areas that you had to think a little bit more, you put in situations where you had to think about the environment, like there was a certain puzzle solving element on top of it, like if you had to make a chandelier fall on something, or maybe a chandelier is a bad choice, or like knock over a boulder to.
Well, that's one of the things I realized,
and that kind of thing would
there's
really
three
helped.
main classes, and it's Rogue, Mage, and Warrior, whatever they're
Right,
called.
and you mix them up.
The Rogue, what was it called? The Rogue?
The Road Warrior?
The Rogue is all about like sneaking and getting behind them with daggers and quick finishing moves, but the level design doesn't complement that, so it doesn't really seem like it works. So if they would have made level design so that was
and that's the problem. Like, you have this flexibility to everything, and then suddenly you have to keep things really open and really, allow the game to support whatever it is that the player is trying to do. So that's really hard to do. I absolutely admit that. It's really hard to do.
It's a good first effort, but clearly there's...
Do you know what game I sometimes think about when I play this game too? It's because if Kingdoms of Amalur is, if it's an RPG with action game combat, then I sometimes think of Viking Battle of Asgard.
You love Viking.
I don't really love that game,
I
but
don't even know. Oh,
do you remember that was Creative Assembly's game? which was an action game in a bigger world
Yeah.
It was
in
like
which you were.
2008 or something.
Yeah, something like that. Aaron Thomas reviewed it for us, and he gave it a 5.5 or something, which I completely understand because that game can get super boring.
Right.
But that's kind of, I feel like those games are cut from the same cloth, just with focus on different types of things. So this feels kind of like, okay, so if Viking is like the action game that took place in a big world, this is the big world that has the action of the action game in it. God, that made no sense the way I just worded
I
it.
got it. I totally got it.
But they feel like they're sort of cut from the same cloth. Their focus is just on different, like they're just different in scope.
Yeah.
So like we've been nitpicking with Amalur's
really fun.
Like it's a really good
Like,
game.
I mean, I would say as soon as I sat down and play Amalur, I'm like, oh, I actually really am I was enjoying playing this game far more than I was enjoying Skyrim. Even though I kind of recognize that Skyrim is the better game. I think I said that to you. It's like I really like what's happening right now, but I can still
Totally.
feel that Skyrim is a better
It's
game.
an in the moment game. Like
Yeah.
definitely when you're playing Amalur, you're like, I'm in the moment, I'm having a lot of fun. But then when you're finished, like another critic said to me, you know what, like I finished Amalur and the next day I didn't remember anything.
yeah.
Like I didn't remember anybody that I talked to. I didn't remember anything that happened to me.
Which is interesting because they had like the R.A. Salvatore doing the story.
And boy, have they made a big deal out of that.
Boy, have
They did
Yeah.
make a big deal
Every
out of it.
PR.
Yeah.
It was on Reddit the
I
other
mean,
day.
I don't quite agree with whoever you're talking to. I think it's a little more memorable than that, but
Right.
it's still just
Yeah, I do think it's a little more memorable than that too. I can remember a few quests, but like when I think about Skyrim,
Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you about 20 different things that I did in Skyrim, at least like right now, if you were to ask
That
me
you
what
did in
adventures.
Skyrim, not
Yeah.
not the story.
And that's part of the problem though, is I think that you
Were there
might be wrong
storylines
about
you
that.
remember?
Because I do remember lots of story elements, but here's the thing, like story is more than just about the plot of something, right? To me, story in gaming is also about kind of what you do in the story that sort of you create as you go. I don't want to take away, because I don't think that takes the place of an actual gaming narrative kind of thing. So I don't want to harp on that too much. But, that's the thing with something like Dark Souls, is I can tell you a bunch of shit I did in Dark Souls. And I can tell you lots of things I did in Skyrim that the game made happen for me because this is something that the game allows. I can't actually tell you about the things that I did, the adventures that I had in Amalur, but I can tell you about 20,000 adventures that I had in Skyrim, and they're going to be different from the ones that Caro tells me about. But when we talk about
Caro's not
Amalur,
gonna tell you
we're going to
anything.
tell each other about the same exact
like
things
you.
that we
I don't
did,
know.
and if we can even remember what they were. And that's the big difference between just a fun, enjoyable game like Amalur and
I totally-
a memorable
totally get
game
that.
like Skyrim that's full of moments that stay with you.
So Skyrim is more like Dead Rising 2, where you have amazing things happen, like you feed a foul hot dog to your co-op partner and they get sick.
you could make that comparison. Yes. I enjoy one of those games more than the other.
He did that to me, actually. When you say co-op partner, you mean co-op partner in the office in life.
Oh, jeez. That was so great
never
when I
forget
told
that.
the producer of the game about that. He's like, I didn't even know you could do that.
Yeah.
And it makes me-
Yeah.
But it's
yeah.
interesting because Amalur's story actually probably is more in the vein of the Darknesses, where it's just like kind of straightforward and it tells it to you. And if there's going to be a memorable moment, it's going to be the one that that they.
Oh, it tells.
set piece kind
The
of-
game tells and tells and tells and tells.
Which is particularly interesting given that the story seems, I mean, from what I've heard, I haven't actually played the game, but it places so much emphasis on the idea that you are, this blank slate who is free from the shackles of fate and free to make all these choice, to create your own destiny. Is choice like ever a really interesting element of the game? No.
Like when I think of Skyrim, like you do have some points, like story-wise, where you do make choices, or you can persuade if you've built up that skill or kind of thing. But ultimately, like the end result doesn't impact you at all. But to contrast that with one of my favorite things that I did in Skyrim, which is become a cannibal. Like you take this quest and you can go in and you can kill this
with
group of
life.
cannibals if you want. But you also get the opportunity to join them. And if you join them, you get a ring. And then you can become a cannibal and feed on people. And that's a case where, or like, with vampires, like you follow a dog and he takes you into a den of vampires or whatever. And you could you could get vampirism and that kind of thing. And suddenly, like, I feel like these are the things, and other stuff too in Skyrim, where the element of choice isn't just something that you're told about, but has absolutely no meaning on your place in the world. as opposed to in Skyrim where you make choices and these have real meaning on the things that you're doing.
Although I gotta say, the one thing I'm actually kind of glad that Amalur didn't go like that route.
The
just
more-
because
I'm okay with it.
It's
It didn't.
a scope
Yeah.
issue. Like Bethesda has this ability to work 6 years on a game.
Yeah.
But Amalur, this game probably couldn't get made if they were trying to take on that level of commitment. So in that sense, I don't know.
Yeah, I
it's
totally
hard
agree.
to blame them for it. But yeah, to get back to just enjoying
Sure.
Amalur, like the thing that I really enjoyed is it's actually really comfortable. Like this is the kind of game that I want to come home after a long day at work, giving this type of show to you all, and play because it feels kind of brainless and mindless, and I like kind of just being led along this trail and not having to invest myself in it. Is that
Totally. No, it is I'm coming home and I'm going to stick in a game and I'm going to sit here for half an hour, an hour. I'm going to play. And that's where the game excels too. Like, because it's like, you don't have to necessarily care about why you're doing it. If it's just fun, it's fun. And so you sit down, you have some fun, you put it up. You don't remember the next day why you were going to these particular waypoints. You just go to them, you kill whatever's there and you have fun doing it. And that's that. And I'm cool with that.
Yeah, you get some cool loot.
Yeah. It's a
Some
loot game.
loot.
It's a loot game.
Yeah,
It's
it's
a
a-
combat
it's a good
game.
life.
It's
But it's interesting also because it's like the darkness seems like it should be that type of game also. But when I was playing that game, I'm like, oh my god, everything's going crazy. I don't know. It's just like not. It doesn't have that same kind of relaxing kind of.
No.
God, no.
But it almost feels like it's supposed to be accomplishing the same thing. Like
I don't think
I don't
that's
agree
true
with
at all. The Darkness 2 seems to be.
What is it trying to accomplish?
It's trying to give you an incredibly intense, visceral, bloody, shocking experience at basically every.
So a teenage power fantasy.
Yeah, it's new for gaming. They don't have many of those.
I don't know about that though. Here's the thing about the pacing in the Darkness 2, which is really interesting because there are times where I wish the combat scenarios had gone on for longer because a lot of them feel like they just come to an abrupt halt so fast for the next whatever thing happens. But there is an interesting pacing to that game, which is like, oh,
Well, yeah, and that's smart because if you maintain that intensity for too long, it just gets exhausting. It gets
over
it gets
it.
tiresome.
that's-
you need peaks and valleys.
That's classic pacing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah.
really.
I mean, it's no Condemned 2. Like when I look at games that like totally have me like in this intense zone, I still think Condemned 2 does it really well.
Almost as good as Condemned.
Yeah, well, I know Carol and I are on, like, we both love Condemned. We just have the games in opposite order in terms of which one we prefer. But, either way you look at it, like, those games take a lot, like, time to really build suspense. And then there's that fantastic payoff that comes.
Fair.
Yeah, totally. Like, and Darkness 2 is sort of the same thing, but, in the quiet times, it's not really building suspense. What it's doing there instead is building character. And I think that's just as worthwhile, but it's different. It means that when the payoff comes, the feeling is different. It's not so much like tension was built and then it was released. It's more about like, oh my God, out of the blue.
Right.
But it is really effective in what it does.
No, I mean, the Darkness 2 has that crazy, oh my god, out of the blue, just in the first, minute of the game. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, when you're in the restaurant and suddenly things are happening.
Things happen. Like, I was playing it next to Giancarlo, and, I was like, oh my god. And he's like, yeah, everybody at that exact moment has the exact same reaction, which is cool, but I don't know.
Well, then when the Darkness releases, like it's non-interactive. It's just a cutscene, but you see the arms finally get their first action, and they're like picking dudes up and ripping them up, and like, oh my god, what is happening? And then when you do it yourself the first few times, and then even in the co-op campaign, which there's one of the characters that you can play in co-op has this staff that he holds, and you can basically lift people up with the power of your mind and then twist them at the waist in half. And at that point I had played the campaign and finished it by the time I played as this character. And after all that time of thinking I had seen everything that could possibly shock me in that game, I had seen somebody's entire chestal cavity. That's a word, right?
Chestal? Totally.
Torn up so I could see the heart beating and the lungs
I think it's
inside.
abdominal.
And yet, the first time I saw that twisting in half thing, I was like, like I was still getting. I mean, it's to the game's credit that there were still things that it could do that still had me like
it had
grossed out in that great way.
delightful, gross out, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to say about these games?
I like to talk, and so I should probably stop now and let everybody else talk.
I don't know. We can move on to news.
Yay!
There's a little bit of news. Mostly, well, there was a little bit of news. The news that I found most interesting this week was the back and forth between developers taking stands on used game sales. We had two fairly high-profile studios take opposite sides on that issue. The Witcher dev, who has been, very outspoken about
Like DRM.
DRM and making games, doing things for the consumer, and then just kind of relying on the consumer to give back. Obviously, they're saying that used games are blocking them would be bad.
Yeah.
Because what does he say? So what's his name? CD Projekt Red managing director Adam Badowski. I can actually say that one. The CEO is like Marcin Iwinski or something. Iwinski! Anyway, we should invest more power to upgrade and polish our products and convince players to keep our products to be with us, to understand our needs. Because we are an independent developer, we have to prevent layoffs. We need to grow up and have the power to create new games.
So I find them maintaining this stance on this issue really admirable and surprising, because it's not like they are a developer that has not felt the sting of what piracy can do. I mean, I forget what the statistic was, but I remember The Witcher 2, I mean, some outrageous number in the millions.
As many have been stolen as
right. I mean, in that game, if that's absolutely a game that deserves to be, purchased and played.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's, I mean, that company is just robbed by those people, and yet they still have the kind of perspective to say, that we want to address this issue in sensible ways and not just go all DRM crazy.
Are they being legally robbed by GameStop?
No. I would say absolutely not. I mean, if I buy a Chrysler and then 3 years later I sell it and to a dealership, and that dealership sells it to somebody else, Chrysler, is not entitled to any of that money. It's, when you purchase an object, of a physical product, what you do with it, it's yours. You own it. You can sell it, and so no, they are not being robbed.
Yeah, I don't know. Like this kind of struck me this week when I was thinking about this. It's like GameStop is in this for their business and not the business. It's
absolutely
like their business model operates on hurting the industry. It seems like.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that I morally approve of what GameStop does. I mean, I don't see any kind of legal basis there. I mean, for criticizing the used game business.
Isn't this sort of why developers want now more than ever, we don't think of games as products, we think of them as services.
Right?
And that's the whole thing, right? Because if it's a product, then it's just like a car.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's a service, then there's value in having your new product and having the service continue through your relationship with the developer and publisher, not with your relationship with GameStop.
Yeah, and Volition, or a Volition developer, speaking independently of Volition, I don't know what that means, but he kind of took that approach also. It's like the opposite, or the way the publishers have been kind of combating used game sales is through various post-release schemes.
Yeah, and the whole the online pass that you only get if you buy a game new,
right,
which then gives you access to,
like, locking off the multiplayer.
Yeah, and that's fair play to me. As far that absolutely, like,
you don't feel like that's anti-consumer behavior?
I feel like it's their, they are the manufacturers of the product, and they can incentivize you to purchase the product new. I don't. I mean, anti-consumer.
It's kind of punitive, right? I don't know.
To me, it just seems like a a sensible way of incentivizing people to buy the game new.
I agreed until I was punished by it when BioWare released a year-old game on the PS3, Mass Effect 2, and cut out the only thing that was new and interesting, the comic book, unless you bought it new. That was the only thing that was new and interesting.
Yeah,
Well, because I
really
didn't play
true.
Mass Effect 1 on the PS3 for obvious reasons.
Yeah. The
So I
comic
was
book
like-
is a character creation tool, right? I mean, it
Yeah,
isn't
it lets you make the
make
choices for
choices,
Mass
right.
Effect and implement Mass Effect 2 because I was going to play 2 and 3 on the PlayStation.
Right.
And then I realized that I had to buy 2 again, and I was like, that was kind of weak, I thought, because it was the only thing that was new and interesting from the year-old game. So usually I don't have a problem with only when it affects me.
It's kind of weird it wasn't on the disc, right? Like you had to actually plug in your code.
Well, they're
to get it.
charging $60 for a game that you could get on the 360 for half that price.
At least.
Like that's the thing that's crazy about me. Where's that's such gall
Right.
to
I
do
mean,
that.
I agree that it crosses a line at times where it's
Yes.
just like, oh God, that's ridiculous.
But by and
I'm just
large-
saying, as a concept,
Yeah.
I think that it has its applications, like the whole online pass idea, or however they want to incentivize.
Yeah, I guess my question is like if they're making a game where the margins are so small, like their profit is so small, like they're spending so much on making this game that they're really hurt by used game sales. Isn't that a problem with the way they're making the game? Like, shouldn't they be not trying to make the biggest, most expensive game because it's just like it's not realistic as far as maintaining a solid business?
There's no room in between anymore. There's no room for anything that's not AAA or that's not cool indie.
That's true.
The in between is falling.
This is kind of why THQ is getting crushed right now, because they were making, like, Homefront is a perfect example of a shooter that is in between and didn't sell enough to justify the expense, or they tried to be in between. I don't know if it really panned out, but you're all looking at me, Marco.
We're not even sure what the question is. You just started rambling.
Oh well, point that out now.
Pontificating.
It's a monkey bar scheme, you know.
Yes.
I'm climbing along the monkey. How do you feel about used games, Marco?
Well, the thing is, I haven't purchased a used game in probably about 2 or 3 years because I look at it this way. Like, at least when I was growing up, there was only a $5 difference between a new game and a used game. So that $5 didn't really look much of a savings.
That's still kind of the case, though, right?
It is still the case. That's why it doesn't make sense for people to buy used. When you look at $10 for the online pass, you're technically spending more if you're that kind of person that wants to play online.
Right.
But I think the issue is more about the trade-in value of games, where when you trade in a game, you're not getting full feature, full value for it. You trade in a game, you might get $10, which GameStop then resells for $40. They're making more of a deal on that than than on
That's
the
why you
market.
don't-
That's why you don't. That's why you don't trade your games into GameStop. You
Use the GameSpot marketplace or Glide.
TM. No, or I mean,
Every single time I forget that we have this goddamn used game.
Yeah.
Where the hell did that come from?
We are allowed to rip that all we want. I actually use Glide because I like Glide. You can be really lazy and use it, which I like.
I get emails all the time. Like, at first, like, there were people calling in, like, "Hi, GameSpot, I bought this game."
Oh,
and I was,
yeah.
like, making fun of them. And then Brendan pointed out, actually, we're in the used games.
We are in the used game. We can still rip on it if we want. Like I really like the idea that the next 360, the 720 doesn't use.
don't call it that.
I'm fine with that.
No used games.
I'm fine. Like that's one of the rumors, and it's
So-
just new games. It's like
I mean,
that's what I do with my PC. I'm used to this already. That's what I do when I download a game every time on the 3DS. On anything, like I can't take it over
Isn't
my
this
friends.
Brendan? Isn't this why Brendan's telling us that consumers have already lost the war?
But I don't have a problem with this idea. Like I like to give money to developers. That's kind of my thing. So I know I'm weird like
The interesting
this.
thing about this, though, is I wonder what, like, is it mostly kids using the used game bin? Are adults
Are full humans.
full of human beings with full-time jobs?
fully fledged human being.
I think so.
Because if it's not, like, if you're selling used games to kids, like, cheaper, then you're basically cultivating your business. You're cultivating your future in that sense. Because if you can get them playing games, just getting them in the door, it's like a gateway.
It's like so the like,
like
you're equating GameStop to drug dealers.
Right.
I have you on record as doing that.
Yes.
Okay.
Tom Agrino am waiting.
And he does represent the views of CBS and its affiliates.
Right.
So there you go.
I'm basically a conduit for Leslie Moonves. So there you go.
Oh my!
But no, I mean stuff like used games and piracy. Even it's like it seems like someone on this guy's blog, whoever wrote this, the guy Volition. one of the top comments was basically you're perpetrating this fallacy that if you're buying a used game, then you would also buy a new game if that game were available, or if the used game weren't available, or if you're pirating a game, you would get the new game if the pirate wasn't available.
Oh, right.
And it really seems like it's more a case of you probably just wouldn't play the game.
Yeah. I
If
mean,
you like games, you're gonna play games though, right? Like you might
Not
get
if you can't afford
Right.
it.
like
exactly.
if you pirate 10 games and then there's no pirate, you might buy 5 games. Like maybe it might not be all 10, but you'd still probably buy 5 games, wouldn't you? If you like games, you're still gonna play games.
Pirates, write in. Tell us what you think.
Yeah, if you're a pirate, write in. Tell us
I'm
why you
curious.
pirate games. I don't know. Don't pirate games.
I
No, but yeah, I mean, it just seems. Pirate games like no, don't pirate.
Please don't pirate games.
Please don't.
Seriously.
The official stance of GameSpot is don't pirate.
Well, that's not a crarazy logic that I have, though, is it? Like they would still buy games; they would just probably play less games because I'm
don't
sure
think
some.
so.
I mean, yeah,
pirates-
like when I've been, on really,
When you were a pirate.
when I when I
When
was
you were
in
desperately poor.
yeah, when I was in financially dire straits, or when I had less money to spend on leisure activities. I mean, I did not pirate. Like, if there was a new $60 game that I wanted to play and I couldn't afford it, I would buy a $20 greatest hit or whatever that I could afford to play.
Oh, with the bad
I wouldn't,
box art.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're saving $30.
and I wouldn't.
It's a
I wouldn't
joke,
pirate
Mark.
the
Come on.
new $60. I think it is a fallacy that the guy is perpetrating. That you whatever. Like you're directly kind of stealing from our pocket by doing this, because a lot of those people, I don't think would ever. It's not like if they couldn't pirate the game, they'd go out and buy it immediately, or
They would buy a different game though. Like you didn't buy the
Yeah.
same $60
Right.
game. You bought a $20 game.
You're
instead. I
essentially
think
agreeing that it's still a fallacy.
it is a fallacy, but you ultimately may not be taking money away directly from CG Projekt, but you're taking money away from the industry, and that's kind of
Yeah.
the
Is
problem.
Is GameStop part of the industry? Is that what you're saying?
No, I think he's saying the opposite.
Yeah, well, used games the industry is not the retail stuff.
Okay.
I guess you're taking money away from publishers or developers who give us these games.
I see.
So it doesn't matter if it's directly this publisher, but it's all publishers.
Right.
So I mean that's my logic. I don't know if it's true.
Well,
or
and like a lot of games now, when they're new, the prices do drop pretty fast on a lot of really cool, interesting games. So wait 3 months, and what did I just buy that was new? I just bought Shadow of the Colossus Eco Collection. And granted,
how much
I don't
was that?
know, it's $29.
It was last September it was 40, and now it's down to 30.
So it's like, this is great. I feel like I got awesomeness, and all I had to do was wait a little while.
Yeah.
I bought Skyward Sword at full price, but that's gonna be a while
that is
before that
controller.
goes.
money well spent. I say.
I like good
That
games.
game is really good.
I like good games.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess one of the few and only, I guess, ways in which I'm kind of okay with the whole counteracting publisher stance on counteracting used game sales is that the thing that Sony is starting doing with the Vita, where it's cheaper to digitally download the game.
Oh, I think that's a really smart.
Like, why hasn't this happened more?
Because they don't want to piss off Best Buy and GameStop and all those other ones. Because the thing is, like, I can obviously download. I can't name any games in the Vita. Hot Shots Golf and that stuff. Right? I could download this stuff, right?
Right.
But how am I going to get the system?
How are you going to get the system?
How am I going to get the system?
Amazon.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but you have to. It's from a retailer.
Yeah.
But when you anger retailers, and Amazon is obviously an exception, but like Best Buy won't prominently display it if they're not getting any money from the sales of the games.
So what do you think?
Right?
What do you think Sony's strategy is here? Are
To
they just
put-
like
well, their strategy, I think,
They don't
is Best Buy and GameStop and etc. are obsolete because nobody wants to go to stores anymore. So they're gonna sell things digitally.
Or they're just deciding that they're losing so much through used game sales that it's worth it.
It's
offending
both.
Them.
Yeah.
They're hoping their consumers are probably learned enough that they're like looking at sites like our site and stuff and seeing what's out there, and that's how they're learning as opposed to looking at the box art in a store.
Well,
So
and
that's not the best. way to
I'm
find
curious
games.
to see like what percentage of people will say, you know what, I'd rather pay the extra $3, $5, or whatever, and have a physical copy that I can.
$10.
that I can then. Is it $10?
It's a $10 difference.
No, it's
No,
not that high. It's a 10%.
Oh,
10%.
10% is so different.
Whatever it is.
I know, it's like $5. Okay, never mind.
Okay,
Sorry.
whatever
My
it
mistake.
is, because then you could say, hey, well, I don't, if I just buy the physical copy, I can then sell it, and I'll get some of that money back, versus. So in the long run, it might, for some people, be less expensive because if you download it, you're never getting any of that money back.
There's no tax if you download it. Is that right?
Oh, I think that's.
I don't think
It varies depending on where you are, I think.
I don't know because nothing on XBLA, nothing on SEN is ever taxed. It's always 800 points, 1,200 points.
Okay, maybe in the United States. I think in Canada it's slightly different.
No.
Sorry, I'm the
Well,
immigrant.
Canada.
People also like boxes, I guess.
I
like
don't
to see.
understand.
I like to download stuff.
And I mean, look, God, the boxes for the Vita that come with just the tiny little game and like no documentation whatsoever.
no
That's
paper.
why I think that's also going to be why more
Yeah.
people are like, even if you buy
guess-
some things off the shelf, you're probably gonna be more inclined to download it later once
I
you see
wonder
that
if that's
you're
a
not.
conscious decision to make the physical
I-
packaging as unappealing, as possible to kind of.
There's not even any manual
get
in
the
most of these
wheels
games.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
nothing in there.
In
Like
most.
there are
In the two that
literally
I've
not
seen.
even inserts in
Yeah.
some of these. We open up these brand new packages with the cellophane on them and open them up. There's nothing in it
Yeah.
but the little card.
Hot
Not
Shots
even
has
a
an
little-
online passcode, so they just got that.
And one, was it Little Deviants that
Had
has
nothing.
the reverse? Well, no,
Oh, that's reversible cover.
the reversible box
Yeah.
art. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. Do we think that this is going to be? Do you think Steam and everybody else is finally going to start knocking off 10% of new
Steam
games?
has
Steam
a
already
sale
does.
every week.
I know they do, but
And Steam and Origin are in these great
still
price wars.
$49.99. Do you think,
No, I don't think that.
you don't think so?
I don't think people
You don't think
playing
anybody's
PC
gonna
people
follow?
playing PC games don't generally go to a store and get a PC game anymore.
Yeah.
So I don't think they. I don't know. I don't think it's the start of a trend. I think it should be the start of a trend.
It should be, but it might not be.
Right.
Yeah. It just seems like usually when the first parties take the lead on this kind of thing, everybody follows.
Well, especially now when you get PC games that cost as much as the console version. You buy Modern Warfare and you buy Kingdoms of Amalur and you still pay the same amount of money as if
Is
you got a
Amalur
console version.
$60 also?
Yeah.
That's
Wow.
ridiculous. We're only paying that because of the licensing fee. They're just stealing money.
I think Mass Effect 3 is going to be as well.
Oh,
I think this is
Lord.
Activision. Isn't Activision who kind of started this trend?
I'm trying to remember.
It was either Activision or EA.
And EA followed suit, maybe.
Yeah, it was weird. I think everybody thought it was going to go the opposite direction.
At least you can get Amalur on Steam at all. You don't have to use Origin. But if you buy the retail, you have to use Origin.
Oh, really?
But if you get it on Steam, Origin's not involved.
Right. They finally settled that dispute. Anyway, let's get to 10 years ago this week in review.
Yay! I love this part of the show.
I'm gonna flip to this camera. Yeah.
Yay.
9.1. 10 years ago this week.
9.1?
9.1.
Wait, so this is
2002.
February 2002.
Okay.
This game is one of a very small percentage of games that can be wholeheartedly recommended to everyone, especially because it retails for less than $20, just like its predecessor. While there were many outstanding shooters in the last year, most of them had to be recommended with a caveat or two. Quote, this is a much better game in a multiplayer, or this game isn't as realistic as you might expect, and so on. In contrast, there are only pleasant surprises to be found in this game.
This is a
Time Splitters
$20?
$20 game?
It's not Time Splitters 2. That was a $50
No,
game.
that was,
Time
yeah.
Splitters.
Is it a PC game?
It is a, I don't know, what?
Is it
It's not-
is it a Serious Sam game?
Oh!
Serious Sam.
Second encounter.
Serious Sam, the second encounter.
Very nice.
Really?
Pro Team.
9.1?
Where'd it go, Caro?
Pro Team
Sounds about
nailed
right.
it on that one.
I
I think
should've
that was
known.
a Greg Kasavin
It was.
review.
Okay.
It was.
Okay.
Yeah. There was not
The first
a-
got an 8, I think, or something like
it?
that. And then
I don't remember.
Yeah.
No, this was deemed a significantly better game in all respects, from the,
Wow.
which justifies
Yeah.
it. Comments, questions, corrections, clarifications? If you have one, hotspot at GameSpot.com. Winner of the Halo book. Oh, this is nice. So I gave away this. There will be no more dramatic readings. We have a winner.
Oh my God.
That's my favorite segment.
The winner of the book is, bear with me here, I need to gird myself, Uladislaw I Mysichaku.
Okay.
Mysichaku.
Marco, can you help?
I need to see how it's spelled.
Come over here.
Well, it's got to be
Uladislav.
Uladislav, right?
And
Uladislav.
he's from Milton, New Hampshire.
Oh, of course.
Of course. Here, right here.
Oh my goodness.
That's shocking.
Vladislav?
Myslachenko.
That's what I would say.
So, Ulad, congratulations.
This is why we have Serbians on staff.
Right. This is the reason we have Serbians on staff.
We hired Marco specifically
Just for that,
these
yes.
moments.
Just for the Eastern European coverage.
Yeah,
awesome.
the contingent. Because I offend them like nobody's business.
Oh, I've
We
seen
need
them.
to,
I've seen
bring
them.
them back into the fold. But yeah, if you want free stuff, follow me or us on Twitter, GameSpot, HotSpot. I will be giving away free stuff there, and you could win stuff like a Halo book. I don't know. I think I have a copy of Bejeweled 3 that I'll be giving away soon for the DS. That's next.
I think Kevin reviewed that game. That was a good game, right?
On PC, I reviewed it.
There you go.
Yeah, but let's see. Housekeeping. To the 14
Housekeeping.
Puerto Ricans I offended last week. You don't understand. I have no filter. Sorry. 14. Not bad.
What exactly did you say?
I may have insinuated that they're... I don't remember. Probably they're less than human or something.
No, I think it was like, we were talking about Guam, and it was like, isn't that a territory? And you brought up Puerto Rico, and you said,
Oh, right.
it's basically the 51st states or something.
No,
I don't
never
know.
said that.
There's something that wasn't that offensive considering what you usually say.
That's true.
Yeah.
No Nazis in Puerto Rico, I must say. Or that I know of.
It's funny that at the time, usually Puerto Ricans are like in parades, right?
Puerto
How do they?
Ricans. I know
Yeah,
they're
how do
really
they
good
have?
at baseball.
Yeah. How do they have time?
One thing I can say about Puerto Ricans.
Oh, God.
Good at baseball. Anyway.
Are you sure you're not thinking about Dominicans?
Anyway, do you like podcasts? If so, we have the GameSpot UK podcast and the OzSpot. You can search for those. I'm getting away from the microphone. I should probably not do that. Go for it. I don't know. They might be good. They're not video. That's for sure. Huge knocking.
You should pimp our new game show.
Oh, right. God, can
Yeah.
you believe my esteemed colleagues got any
People
views?
like it.
I can totally believe it. I thought it was like such a fantastic idea.
When we were up here, I was just thinking, oh my God, we're going to get 4 comments and they're all going to be like, too long, didn't watch. That was actually the first name of it.
No.
Too long,
The
didn't listen.
first name was GameSpot Debates.
GameSpot. Oh.
And then it was like the debate club.
Was
and
it
then
ever
got,
like Meta Game Solid?
It was Metagame Solid.
Metagame
Funds of the
Solid.
Patriots.
Funds of the Patriots. Yes.
FUNS. That
We
was
refined that in brainstorming sessions.
so.
but,
My
God.
esteemed colleagues.
I love that we went with my esteemed colleagues because that title led to the best top slot image
Yeah, that is
in
awesome.
possibly in GameSpot history.
I think
Van
so.
nailed that.
Van is
Yeah, that
a
was
If you
genius.
didn't see it, you're SOL.
Yeah.
Because it's gone now.
Because it's
No.
gone forever. You'll never see it again.
We're
Do my esteemed colleagues in our maybe it'll come. I don't know.
I don't-
Maybe
I've-
you'll get Halo 4. It's just a crapshoot. But no, so I think we're gonna do that like every other week is the current plan.
Yeah.
Half an hour seems about right. We may mix up the formula. I don't know. It's all seat of our. I cannot believe you guys like this show. That's crazy.
That's why we put it together because
was
I mean
Shay's
we've
idea.
thought it would be bad, so we're flabbergasted. You thought otherwise.
Oh, and also I want to pimp. We did something on Johann Sebastian Joust, which is this incredible move game that doesn't use the PlayStation or a television. Chris wrote a little feature. We recorded what it looks like when we play it. It's on the site. Johann Sebastian Joust. Check it out because it is like.
We're gonna
One
do
of
more
the-
of those, right?
What was that?
We need to have real life maps.
We're gonna do more of these because this is one of the coolest games any of us has ever seen because it's.
Well, and the plus is we kicked Tom
Really
in the
cool.
junk. I mean
Yes.
that's why you watch.
You really are excited about that.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
yeah.
a physical game, as Kevin
It
has
is a
pointed
physical
out. But
game.
yeah, so check out those two things. 'Cause those are two things that are worth
And
checking
we're
out.
probably going to have the guy, Douglas Wilson.
Douglas Wilson.
We're going to have him on the show.
He's
around
flying in from
this week
Copenhagen just for a 5-minute bit
on
with.
the hotspot.
There you go.
And then he's flying right back.
Flying right back. I mean,
Well,
he's
he'll be deported by then. so-
Joust is nominated for like best innovation at the GDC Awards, but I think he's just flying in just for us.
Yeah.
That sounds reasonable.
Does sound reasonable. Carol Pettit,
Hey, Tom.
thank you for appearing.
My pleasure.
Thomas McShay.
Kind of like this pimping portion of the podcast. Like
I
it
know,
feels.
right? I feel like I could just say anything.
I-
Go visit punpunpun.com.
oh my god, that thing is horrible.
Marco.
Hey.
Hey. Kevin.
If we're doing pimping, we need bigger hats.
All right. Big pimpin'.
And
That does it
canes.
for me. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Hotspot out!